Majin Vegeta inside of Xenoverse 2 is criminally disrespected if you ask me. From having a bunch of reused Vegeta attacks, having the same exact moveset as Vegeta, and having an ultimate that is pretty good in the final explosion, but isn't the greatest ultimate in the game, I feel like Majin Vegeta really needed a buff in the game of Xenoverse 2. So that's what I'm going to be talking to you guys about today, as in the next gameplay enhancer update, the 5.6 update, Majin Vegeta will now be receiving his character exclusive Super Soul. More specifically though, the first variation of Majin Vegeta, not the second one. Only the first costume of Majin Vegeta will get this Super Soul, as the second costume's exclusive Super Soul will be completely different and added in at a later date. But for today, we got the first costume of Majin Vegeta. So, before we get into the details, for those of you unaware, the gameplay enhancer is pretty much just a giant quality of life patch for Xenoverse 2 that aims to make the cast characters much better than CACs and very fun options to pick. And for today, we of course have Majin Vegeta's character exclusive Super Soul. So, of course, without any further ado, let's get into the details. So, Majin Vegeta's character exclusive Super Soul is present on Majin Vegeta's first costume. So the character exclusive Super Soul on the first costume is called Return of the Dark Prince, which is of course present on Majin Vegeta's first costume. The effects are as follows. So at the start of the match, applies the following effects to self. The first effect is his base max health gets increased by 20%, a permanent buff. Majin Vegeta actually has a pretty decent health stat, but I wanted to actually improve on his defensive capabilities and being able to take a hit. As I'll get into a little bit later and explain why I chose the stats I did, Majin Vegeta will now be a lot more tanky with the 20% addition to his base max health. The second effect for Majin Vegeta is he gets a 10% permanent buff to his stamina and ki recovery. While Majin Vegeta with the stamina and ki recovery will be a lot more mobile, one of the reasons I chose the base stamina and ki recovery buff is because Majin Vegeta doesn't have the highest stamina ever, so giving him some extra stamina recovery is definitely something in order if you ask me. The ki recovery will come into play a little bit later. The third effect of Majin Vegeta's Super Soul is his base ki blast and ki blast super damage are increased by 20%, a permanent buff. Taking a look at Majin Vegeta's stat sheet, you will notice that he already is a ki blast based fighter, so you might be wondering, wait a second, why did you buff his ki blast? Didn't you buff his strikes? Well, no, I wanted to focus specifically on Majin Vegeta being a ranged fighter. Vegeta in the series is known for being a ranged fighter, shooting a bunch of blasts, so I wanted to power up his blast more so than his strikes, making it so he is a force to be reckoned with when he launches something like a final flash at the opponent, which will do massive damage. Speaking of massive damage, his fourth effect is his stamina damage goes up by 15%, a permanent buff. As I explained in the future Gohan video, stamina damage is the damage you do to an opponent's stamina when they're blocking. The higher this number is, the faster the stamina will go down. Majin Vegeta being a ranged fighter will surely have his attacks blocked by the enemy a lot of the time, so Majin Vegeta being able to shred through the stamina a lot faster is definitely something that is needed for him in my book if he's going to be a ranged fighter. And for his fifth effect, he actually gets a 10% revival HP boost when he revives. You know when you revive how much HP you get? Well, Majin Vegeta will get an extra 10%, allowing him to actually compete in battle and get back into the swing of things a lot easier than most other characters. Those are all his permanent stat buffs, which actually take place at the beginning of the battle. However, as you all know, after the stat buffs is where things usually get interesting, so for Majin Vegeta, his sixth effect is, when his super skill, the Atomic Blast, is used, the following effects take place. A stack of 8 times, a permanent buff. The first effect is his stamina damage plus 3%, up to 24%. The second effect of this effect is ki super damage plus 8%, up to 64%. And then his third effect for this effect is a damage reduction plus 3%, up to 24% as well. Think of Turles here and the fact that he stacks his attack whenever he uses a super attack. We should also be mentioned Majin Vegeta's Atomic Blast has been upgraded to SSBE's Atomic Blast, which is a lot better. Whenever you use Atomic Blast, Majin Vegeta will stack his ki blast damage, not his base inflicted damage, but his ki blast super damage. The reason I chose this is because, of course, I want Majin Vegeta to absolutely shred through enemies' defenses when they're trying to block his attacks. Majin Vegeta only really has the final flash as his ultimate attack. The first variation does not have final explosion, so you won't be able to shred through enemy stamina with that. But being able to go through the enemy stamina and lay down a bit of a wallop on the enemy is definitely something that is in order in my opinion. And also you need to stack it 8 times to get the full effect. Remember, you do get a 15% base stamina damage increase, so using Atomic Blast will allow Majin Vegeta to shred through the enemy competition. It should be noted that if you get knocked out of an attack of Atomic Blast, the charge will still count if the Super Soul activates. Last but not least, the seventh effect of Majin Vegeta's Super Soul is when his guard is broken or stamina hits 0, that applies the following effects to self 5 times only. Majin Vegeta, when his stamina is broken, will block the next 5 hits. This might need some explaining. So if your stamina hits 0, you know how much danger you're in normally, right? You have no stamina, you can't defend yourself. Well, Majin Vegeta, the first 5 times his stamina is broken, he will be completely immune to damage for 5 hits. So say your stamina gets broken by an enemy when using an ultimate attack, the first 5 hits on you, you'll be immune to damage. However, attacks like Kamehameha or Gallican that have multiple hits in quick succession to each other, you will take all 5 hits in a very short amount of time. So you better be very careful when your stamina breaks, because if your stamina breaks and you lose all 5 hits at once, that counts as a charge for that Super Soul effect. This effect will activate 5 times and make Majin Vegeta a huge force to be reckoned with in hard parallel quests. That's pretty much it for Majin Vegeta Super Soul. Of course, with the Super Soul, I wanted him to be a defensive powerhouse, but at the same time, I wanted him to be a Ki Blast Super Menace that will shred through enemies, guard and defense, and everything of the sort, as a very good option to bring into a hard parallel quest. So hopefully with the Super Soul, Majin Vegeta will be brought into hard parallel quests. Before we move on to the next character, I'd quickly like to go over a new mechanic I introduced in, it was 2 updates ago if I'm not mistaken, where there are actual PvP variants of the Super Souls as well. To prevent this video from being 58 minutes long, let me just quickly explain what PvP variants are. You of course have the normal variations of Super Souls, but then you also have the PvP variants. PvP variants are a choice you can install when you first install the gameplay enhancer. PvE variants are the ones I've been going over. PvP variants are much more balanced versions that you can use to play with your friends. The PvP variations have slight alterations that are a lot more balanced than their original Super Souls. For example, Majin Vegeta's differences in his PvP from PvE Super Soul is the stat boosts you get that I went over are the exact same. However, when his Atomic Blast is used, instead of it being a stacking effect 8 times, the following effects will only apply to him during the length of the attack. He'll get health auto recovery, 300% stamina damage, 150% Ki Blast damage, and 30% damage reduction only during the length of the attack. The effects reset when the attack ends. That effect will activate 1 time. And then his 7th effect is, it has the same block mechanic, but instead of activating 5 times for 5 hits, it activates 1 time for 4 hits. These are just introduced to make PvPing with your friends a lot more fun and actually be able to use these characters in PvP, because bringing someone like Majin Vegeta into PvP against a normal cast character who doesn't have a character exclusive Super Soul would be purely awful, and that's why the PvP variations are in the gameplay enhancer now, and you can switch between the two with the Super Soul Hot Swapper tool that is found inside of the RAR file for the gameplay enhancer. I won't go over what that does, but pretty much you swap between the 2 Super Souls you want. There's more information on that tool if you are interested. However, I will go over the PvP variants when they get introduced, but it'll be a very short detour, so don't worry about that. But anyway, without any further ado, let's go over the second character of the new character exclusive Super Soul pack for the 5.6 update. As you all know, 2 new characters are introduced every update. So who's the second character, you might be wondering? Well, it's actually Metal Cooler. Metal Cooler is the second character to be receiving his character exclusive Super Soul in the next gameplay enhancer update, the 5.6 update. In my video for future Gohan and Turles, I got a very cool comment from a viewer suggesting a Metal Cooler Super Soul that is based around him reviving, of all things. Kind of like Full Power Frieza, if you ask me. A lot of you guys seem to like this comment and this idea, so I decided to go with it. Once again, I appreciate all the suggestions I've gotten. If you have any suggestions for a soul you would like to see, feel free to leave a comment. And if I like it and if everyone else likes it, then I may end up making it actually into the next update for the gameplay enhancer or a future update. So please feel free to leave suggestions. I am fully here to hear suggestions from you guys. So thanks again to the commenter that left this Metal Cooler Super Soul idea. Hopefully this upcoming Super Soul is something that you are looking for. So without any further ado, let's get into the details. So the name of this Super Soul is, put simply, You'll Never Defeat Me, which is present on Metal Cooler's only variation, Super Villain Metal Cooler excluded. So at the start of the match, the following effects apply to self. His base max stamina gets a 15% increase. Metal Cooler doesn't have the most amount of stamina ever, so I felt giving him a stamina increase is definitely something in order. His second effect, he gets a permanent 5% increase to his damage reduction. This is a permanent buff to allow him to be a bit more tanky. Speaking of being a bit more tanky, this 5% damage reduction plays pretty well into his next effect, his third effect. Shortens own revival time by 10%, a permanent buff. When you are being revived, you know how long it can normally take. Well, Metal Cooler will take 10% less time, a permanent buff, allowing him to get back into the battle faster if he were to get KO'd. So the fourth effect is where things get interesting if you ask me. So for the fourth effect, applies the following effects to self based on the number of times this character has been KO'd. The first time Metal Cooler is KO'd, he will revive with 2 health bars. So saying Metal Cooler maybe gets hit by a Super Kamehameha on a hard parallel quest and it kills him, he'll revive immediately with 2 health bars, kind of like Full Power Frieza, but he gets more health. Starting from the second time he gets KO'd, he increases the following his stats by the specified amounts. Permanent buffs. His base Ki and Ki recovery go up by 30%, meaning Cooler will get an extra permanent 3 Ki bars and a 30% increase to his Ki recovery. In addition to that, his second effect of this effect is his base max stamina goes up by an additional 15%. This will allow him to use his evasive more often, hyper movement being a 2-bar evasive, allowing him to get out of tricky situations. And by the way, 15% stamina is 1.5 stamina bars. His third effect of this effect is his damage reduction goes up by an additional 25%. in addition to his 5% from his base kit. And then his fourth effect is he gets a 25% permanent inflicted damage buff. All these buffs are of course permanent. However, starting from the third KO, there won't be any more special effects, but Metal Cooler now will be a force to be reckoned with inside of Hard Parallel Quest, being a very tanky monster, while at the same time dishing out a lot of damage. But that's not it, as Metal Cooler has a fifth effect on his Super Soul as well. When Metal Cooler's guard is broken, applies the following effect to self for the duration. No limit. Shortens own guard break time by 25%. This is a permanent buff that'll activate every time Metal Cooler's stamina hits 0. It has no limit to its use. The Metal Cooler, of course being a robot with pseudo-unlimited energy, will of course recharge his energy really fast, so his guard break being reduced by 25% will allow his a lot of stamina to recover very fast when his stamina were to get broken. So hopefully with this Super Soul, Metal Cooler will also see a lot more play inside of Hard Parallel Quest and custom content. Before we finish up, let me go over his PvP variant as well. His PvP variant is the same exact thing as his base variant with the stats, of course. However, the fourth effect is different than his PvE variant. It still has the revive, however, he will only revive with 1 health bar when he's KO'd, and there is no effect after the first KO. Instead of getting 2 health bars, he gets 1. His fifth effect is the exact same as well. However, instead of getting 25% to a shortened own guard break time, he gets 15%. But that's about it for Custom Super Souls in this episode, guys. I hope you guys are excited to try these out. The new gameplay enhancer update, which should be in the description. It should be live as we speak. With this new update, we of course have a new title screen. We have all the new stuff you would normally expect from an update, but hopefully you guys are pretty excited to try this out. By the way, Majin Vegeta's name in-game was changed from Prince of Destruction Vegeta to Majin Vegeta. If you guys want me to revert the change, if you don't like it, feel free to let me know, but I'm all out of time for today, guys. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I will see you on the next one.